We're not there. We've got sick kids. Debbie Wood just texted me a few minutes ago. She's at Medac and has been diagnosed with the flu. So we're glad you're here today. I'm glad you're here today. So here's what I want you to do. Stand up for a minute and just say good morning to the neighbors around you, all right?
Good morning, neighbor.
Good morning. Good morning, neighbor. Praise the Lord. All right, well, thank you. Glad that you're here today, and for those of you that are Carolina fans, I have to rub it in. We beat you at home. Yes, we beat you at home. See, God still answers prayer, all right? I know what you're praying right now, but no, he's going to let me finish preaching before he kills me, all right? So don't pray that, all right? If you're visiting with us today, we're in a new series called The Money Pit. And I knew that after Christmas, you would start getting credit card bills coming in from all the stuff you spent in December to buy gifts for people. And I knew that your standard of giving would exceed your standard of giving and living. So I wanted to do a series right after Christmas on how to get out of debt. And I'm going to be sharing with you 20 to 30 biblical principles over 4 or 5 weeks on how to get out of debt. You can do it. It is possible. Today we come to the third sermon in the series, and if you haven't been with us, you can go to our website and download the audio as well as the outline for the 2 previous sermons so that you can kind of catch up to where we are today. The Bible says this in 1 Corinthians 14:33, "For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace." The Bible tells us that we have a rather organized God. He's not a God of chaos, but he's very orderly. In fact, as we look at the universe, as we study the universe, as we study our own planet, we realize that God has set things up in a certain way so that they always function, and that's due to the organization our God has. Everything on our planet is finely tuned. Everything in the universe is finely tuned. In fact, the psalmist puts it this way in Psalm 104, "You, God, placed the world on its foundation so it would never be moved." Do you know that our earth tilts on its axis at 23.5 degrees? And if it tilted 1 degree to the right, we would burn up. If it tilted 1 degree to the left, we'd freeze up. We are exactly where we need to be positionally in orbit for life to survive on this planet. And what that tells me is that God is a God of order. And he has created certain laws in nature that always stay true. They're always there. There are laws of physics. There's law of mathematics. There's laws of nature. There's laws of chemistry. And we look to nature to see what those laws are. Well, God also has spiritual laws, and we go to the Word of God to find out what those are. Now, you don't have to understand how these laws function to benefit from them. You don't have to study them. You just have to accept them, appreciate them, and work and live your life within the confines of them. For example, you may not understand how magnets work and magnetism, but that doesn't stop your car from using the GPS or your phone to give you directions when you travel. You may not understand how electricity works, but that doesn't stop us from turning on lights. You may not understand how the combustion engine works, but you drove your car today in spite of not knowing how it works. So you don't have to know how these laws work in order to benefit from them. Even there's a concept, there's a thing we experience every day. It's called gravity. Do you know that scientists to this day cannot explain gravity? The most brilliant scientist ever, Albert Einstein, put it this way. He says, nobody understands the law of gravity. It doesn't even make sense. Einstein came to the conclusion that acceleration and gravity were not separate things, but they were the same thing. He said that gravity is not a force of attraction, but it is a curvature. And that revelation he had later in his life before he died, he states this: things don't fall because of gravity or acceleration, but due to the curvature of the earth. Now, for many of you, how many did that just go right over your head? All right, me too. But I don't have to understand gravity to appreciate it, okay? For example, our earth is spinning. It's spinning. When we spin things, what is the natural result of spinning? What happens? It goes out. So why aren't we flying off of this planet? I mean, think about how gravity works. What if every Tuesday and Thursday God says, y'all won't have gravity? Well, I'm not getting out on the road on Tuesday and Thursdays. All right? There are certain laws that God has created, and they always are true. They're always here. They never change, and therefore we can bank on them. You know, I've been a pilot for many years, and many of you don't understand how planes lift and how they fly. It's called the Bernoulli principle in physics. Your wing of the plane is curved, and as wind hits that, it creates a vacuum above the wing. And it's that vacuum that sucks the plane up. The greater the thrust, the greater the vacuum, the greater the lift. But you don't have to understand the physics. You don't have to understand the Bernoulli principle to fly. You just buy your ticket, you get on your plane, and you take a trip, right? I mean, you're not sitting there going, how does this plane fly? You just enjoy it. So God has created certain laws. They're not theories, but they're laws that are always true no matter what era or year or century they are. And they always have the same results. And what's true in science is true in Scripture. God has given us in His Word certain laws about money and how finances work, how to manage it, how to save it, how to spend it, how to invest. He's given these laws to us in His Word so that we would understand and so that we could live our life according to Scripture. He inspired one man named Solomon to give us 2 great books with a lot of these biblical principles in them. His name is Solomon. Solomon was the son of King David, and when King David died, Solomon became Israel's king immediately. And within like the first day or two, he went to God in prayer, and he said, God, I'm going to be a new king, and I only ask for one thing. Give me wisdom to rule this kingdom the way you want me to. And God was so impressed that all Solomon wanted was wisdom. God said, all right, I will make you not only the wisest man who ever lived, I'll make you the wealthiest man who ever lived. And so God did that. Solomon is the wisest man who's ever lived, and he's the most wealthiest man who ever lived. And from that, he wrote 2 books, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. And he gives us these 20 or 30 biblical principles, these biblical laws about money and money management. So we're going to look at those today. So I want to show you one passage from Proverbs right up front, Proverbs 11:18. The wicked man earns deceptive wages, but he who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. In a nutshell, God says, whatever you sow, you reap. That is a law of the universe. So I want you to underline some words here as we make our way through this. The wicked man, he earns, okay? Underline the word earns, okay? And then underline the word reaps. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. It's just the law of the universe. Now, in this verse, Solomon is talking about money. He's saying, your wages, your income, there's certain laws that God has created in the universe, and this is how it works. And he says, the dishonest man, if he makes his money dishonestly, he's going to also pay for it in a dishonest way. He says, but if you sow honestly, you're going to reap a great reward. Now, today, the way we farm is completely different. We have lots of farm equipment, but in thousands of years ago and for thousands of years, when the farmer went out to sow his seed, he didn't have a machine that put a hole in the ground and planted the seed. He had a little satchel and he had seeds in it. And he would just walk and just throw it. Just throw it. That's where the term broadcasting comes from. Broadcasting means you just throw something indiscriminately in a broad area. And in that day, some of it fell on hard ground. Some of it the birds ate. Some of it fell on thorny ground, but some of that seed would fall on good soil and it would take root. And so the principle we're going to look at today is this. Whatever you sow, you will reap. You will reap it. And this applies to more than just money. It applies to relationships. It applies to your words. It applies to your time, your talents, your energy. Whatever you sow, whatever I sow, in whatever area, we will reap. So let me walk you through the 9 laws on money that Solomon gives us from Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Here's law number 1. Everything begins as a seed. Everything starts as a seed. An idea starts as a seed. Every dream is a seed. Every achievement is a seed. Every building idea that ever comes up is a seed. Your life began as a seed. So everything starts as a seed. In fact, in the scripture, God calls this the seed principle right up front in Genesis 1. Look at it. Then God said, let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant, and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came. And that's what happened. I love what Pastor Robert Schuller says on this verse. He goes, anyone can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God can count the number of apples in a seed. Why? Because a seed has exponential potential. You take one seed and you plant it. You don't just get one thing back, you get a multitude of things back. You create more seeds, and those seeds create more plants and more plants. In fact, you can plant one tree seed in the ground, and after hundreds of years, you'll have a complete forest from one little single seed. This is why God says in Zechariah 4:10, do not despise the small things, because everything starts as a seed. For several years, I lived in Mill Valley, California, which is in Northern California. And right out several miles from my seminary was Muir Woods. They have some beautiful, beautiful forests there. There are redwoods. Redwoods are some of the tallest trees in the world. The tallest redwood today is 380 feet. That's 38 stories. The redwoods are so big that they put tunnels through them and you can drive your car through them. And they keep growing. They keep growing. And guess what? You may think that seed is humongous. Let me show you how small a redwood seed is. It is smaller than a dime. That tree that can grow bigger than this stage and 380 feet starts as something smaller than a dime. And you can look at that seed and go, how in the world does something so little grow something so big? Everything starts as a seed. It's the exponential potential in every seed. Everything starts as a seed idea, a seed thought, a seed dream, and you begin to plant that. Getting out of debt starts as a seed. And here's a great verse you need to put as the wallpaper to your smartphone. Job 8:7. Notice what it says. Even though the seed seems small and insignificant, you're going to end up in the future blessed and prosperous. So law number 1, everything, including getting out of debt, starts as a seed. Here's law number 2. Unplanted seeds produce nothing. Nothing happens in your life until the seed is planted. Seeds in a package produce nothing. Only planted seeds produce. You see, seeds are meant to be planted. I read this true story on, where did I get this from? Associated Press. This 46-year-old man had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He only had a few months to live, so he put together a bucket list. Okay? His name is John, and he decided that one of the things he wanted on his bucket list was to have a car chase by police. He'd always been a law-abiding citizen, and he just wanted to know what the thrill of that was like. So one day he was going down the interstate highway, and he saw a state trooper way down the road in the median, so he just floored it. And he went past that trooper like crazy. Well, the trooper turned on his lights and went after him. Okay? And he didn't slow down. He even put more metal to the pedal. All right? Somewhere down the interstate, he saw an off-ramp, so he took it. By this time, this trooper has called other state troopers, and they do what's called the pit maneuver, and they cornered him. When the trooper went up to him and said, "Sir, what in the world are you doing?" He says, "Man, I've got terminal cancer. I'm going to be dead in a few months, and I just wanted to know what it was like to be chased by you guys." The trooper said, "Never in my 30 years as a state trooper have I ever heard that excuse." Now listen to me. I'm not planting a seed in you to do that this week, all right? But nothing starts until it's planted, and if you don't plant the seed, nothing happens. It's like the old statements on the old Coke cans. No deposit, no return. You've got to deposit the seed. So a farmer, he walks out in the early spring, he sees empty fields. He doesn't gripe about it. He doesn't complain about it. He doesn't sit there and go, "I can't believe how bad the soil is. I've got this barren field." He doesn't go, I can't believe how bad the economy is. It's terrible. I'm making no money." He doesn't think that way. He goes out and starts broadcasting seed, because nothing's going to grow until the seed is planted. He can pray all he wants. "God, grow some crops." But God's not going to grow any crops till he casts the seed. Some of you are waiting on God. You're waiting on God to bring you a job, or bring you a spouse, or bring that big sale in, or that big deal in. You're waiting for that big windfall. You're waiting for that income to increase. And God says, "You're waiting on me? I'm waiting on you to plant the seed." Everything starts as a seed. A relationship, a marriage, a cell phone. Whoever it is, thank you for that quick illustration, all right? Everything starts as a seed. Everything does. But nothing happens until the cell phone rings. Until the seed is planted, all right? Now, what am I saying here? Planting is an act of faith. I've got to take it, and then I've got to give it away. If I put it in the ground and I bury it, that seed's going to take root, and it's going to grow. God says planting the seed is an act of faith, and that brings him glory. And Jesus expanded on this principle in John 12. Look what he says. "I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies." Now, at this point, he's talking about himself. He's saying, "Guys, until I get crucified and die and put in the ground and I'm resurrected, there's going to be no life. He remains alone, but its death will produce many new kernels, a plentiful harvest for new lives." I found this great quote. It's on your outline. "Whenever I have a need, I plant a seed." Whenever I have a need, I plant a seed. I don't know what you need. If you need more money, you need more energy, you need more time, you need more support, you need more relationships, you need more wisdom. I don't know what you need, but whatever it is, you need to plant that seed. Whatever you need more of, you got to give more of that to God. This is called the principle of reaping and sowing. When I have a need, I don't gripe about it. I don't complain about it. I don't whine about it. I don't moan about it. I don't even pray about it. I plant the seed, because nothing happens until the seed is planted. Here's law number 3. I will reap what I sow. Whatever you put in the ground, that's exactly what you're going to get back. It's called the principle of reproduction. Some of you have gardens and in your backyards. When you plant tomato seeds, are you going to get watermelons? No, whatever you plant, whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap. If you plant cucumber seeds, you're not going to get apples. No, you're going to get cucumbers. So whatever you plant is exactly what you're going to get back. Listen to me. This principle applies to everything in your life, and especially in your finances. You know, when God created this earth, he gave a statement that he repeated over and over in Genesis 1. And it's this: each is to produce its own kind. So when you plant tomato seeds, you get tomatoes, not potatoes. You plant apples seeds, you get apple trees. You don't get pears. Cows produce baby cows. Dogs produce puppies. Cats produce kittens. We produce people. We reap in kind the kind we sow. And this can apply to you in a positive way, and it can apply to you in a negative way. It can work for you, and it can work against you. This is why God says this in Galatians 6:7. Do not deceive yourselves. No one makes the fool of God. What is God saying? Listen, I have created certain laws in this universe. If you think you make a fool of me by violating that law, you're going to end up being the fool. You will reap exactly what you plant. So you can reap it positively or you can reap it negatively. And God is saying what goes around comes around. If you're out planting seeds of kindness to people, you're going to get kindness back. If you're out planting grace seeds and mercy seeds and seeds of forgiveness to people, you're going to get that in return. If you go out and you're planting seeds of generosity, God's going to bless you with more. But the opposite is also true. If you're angry all the time, people are going to be mad with you. If you gossip, people are going to gossip about you. If you judge people, people are going to judge you. What goes around comes around. Whatever you sow, you will what? Reap. And this applies to money as well. So if we're always out, not taking care of the money God has entrusted to us, we're going to end up in worse situations. It applies to things like gossip. You're always out talking about people behind their back, people are going to be talking about you behind your back. Because whatever you sow, you will reap. This is a spiritual law. God will make sure that if you gossip, people are going to gossip about you. Let me show you another negative way. Proverbs 26:27. If you set a trap for others, you will get caught in it yourself. If you roll a boulder down on others, it will crush you instead. What goes around comes around. Look at Hosea 10. But you have planted wickedness, you have reaped evil. You see, what we want to do is we want to plant one thing, but reap something completely different. It doesn't work that way. Because God has created these spiritual laws, and they only work a certain way. It's not going to happen. It's kind of like, I was a youth pastor for years. And then Audrey and I, when we came here, we built a great, wonderful college ministry for years. And here's what I always notice about these college kids, and even young adults, is that they want to go out on Friday and Saturday nights and sow their wild oats, and then show up on Sunday morning and pray for a crop failure. Do you get it? It doesn't work that way. You sow your wild oats, you're going to reap the pain from those wild oats. You cannot sow irresponsibility and become a success in life. I cannot sow laziness and think I'm going to be rewarded in life. I cannot sow stinginess in my life and expect God to bless me with things. I cannot sow procrastination and think things are just going to fall into place. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. Whatever you plant, you're going to harvest. And there's a lot of stories in the Bible where God illustrates this with his own people. There's a guy in the Old Testament named Jacob. Jacob decided to deceive his father and brother in order to get what's called the birthright and all the blessings that would be entitled to the firstborn. He wasn't the firstborn, but he stole that right. What goes around comes around. And later in life, Jacob's father-in-law deceived him about the daughter he thought he was going to marry. What goes around comes around. There's a great story in the book of Esther. There's a guy named Haman. He hated the Jews. He wanted all the Jews in Persia killed. But there was one particular Jew he couldn't stand above all others. His name was Mordecai. So Haman went and had these gallows built, and he was going to have Mordecai hung on the gallows. Well, guess what happens at the end of Esther? It is Haman who gets hung on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. What goes around comes around. Ralph Waldo Emerson puts it this way: sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. Whatever you give out, you're going to get back. If you want people to like you, then like people. If you don't want people to gossip about you, don't gossip about people. If you want people to trust you, then you've got to trust people. Whatever you give out, God sees to it that you get the same in kind back. And it's true in every single area of your life. Whatever you give out, you're going to get back. Law number 4. And this was the tough one. I'm not the only sower. You're not the only sower. What does that mean? You're reaping the crops that other people have sown. There are people beside you right now. There are people you work with. There are people who lived way before us, and there are going to be people who come way after us. And the people today and the people in the past, they've been sowing seeds, and you are reaping some of the benefits of that, and you're also reaping some of the hurt of that. For example, my father-in-law fought in World War II. And there are men and women here today in our church who have fought in wars, and we are able to sit here today in freedom because these people were willing to give their lives. You didn't do it, I didn't do it, but we reap the benefit of what they sowed, their very lives, so that we could have the freedom. You drove today in a car, but there were other people through technology that got the gasoline out of the oil so that you could do it. We sow things all the time. We reap things all the time. But some of the things we reap are from the other things people sowed. So not only do we have blessings from that, we also have pain from that. You've been hurt by other people and the seeds they have sown. Some of you grew up in families where there was a history of multiple generations of abuse. You need to say today, it stops with me. I'm breaking that chain. I'm breaking that. It will go no further. Some of you grew up in families where there's multiple generations of, let's say, alcohol abuse. You need to say today, it stops with me. It's done. I'm not going to pass that on to anybody else. Some of you grew up in families where there's multiple generations of divorce. You need to say, I will hang in this marriage. I will stay in this marriage. I will not let anyone be impacted by the breakup of my marriage. You can't control the past, but you can control where you are now. Here's what I'm trying to say. It's your next fill-in. Everything I do has consequences. And it's not just on you, it's on the people around you. It's on your peers. It's on the people you work with. It also affects this generation and generations to come. Because you're reaping not only the positive from previous generations, you're reaping the negative from those generations before you. So why not decide today? It stops with me. I will not pass these negative things on to any generation in the future. Why not let your personal and your family life be the motto of Joshua, where he says this in Joshua 24:15. But if you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today whom you will serve. As for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. Let that be your motto. Make a decision today to draw a line in the sand and say, no more will I perpetuate negative seeds. No longer will I allow the bad of my life to affect others. I'm going to plant different seeds. Now, you can't change the past, but you can change where you are today. And by doing that, you can change the future. So quit excusing your sin. Quit excusing your faults. Decide today. Say, the negative seeds that I've been reaping, the next seeds I've been sowing, ends with me today. As for me and my house, from this moment on, we will serve the Lord. Quit saying, well, that's just the way I am. You know what kind of people say that? Jerks. I'm going to just throw it out there. That's not the way you are. That's the way you choose to be. Well, my father was that way. Well, he was a jerk too. You don't have to be that way. You don't have to perpetuate this generational abuse. You can plant different seeds beginning today. Your life is going to affect other generations. You can't just think about yourself. You need to make a statement that says, it's my life, and I'm going to choose to serve the Lord. Don't say it's my life, I'll do with it whatever I want to, because you're going to reap exactly in kind back from others. Remember, you're not the only sower. You're sowing seeds. You're experiencing the reaping of good seeds that people have planted. Also, the bad seeds people have planted. You're experiencing the seeds and the reaping of righteousness and unrighteousness and holiness and unholiness by others. You're reaping seeds that destroy and demolish, as well as those that build up and encourage. Jesus talked about this in John 4. Look what he says. I sent you to harvest where you didn't plant. Others had already done the work. And now you will get to gather the harvest. You get to reap the results, not only from your seeds, but the seeds of others. So I need to realize everything starts as a seed. I need to realize nothing happens till I plant that seed. And I need to realize that whatever I sow, I'm going to reap. And I'm not the only sower. Law number 5. The season I reap in will be different from the season I sow in. You know this. When you go out and plant those tomato seeds, you don't walk out tomorrow and there's full plants with tomatoes on them. There's always a delay. Plants take time to grow. There's no such thing as instant maturity. I mean, there's no such thing as instant fame, but there's no such thing as instant success. It takes time to grow in wisdom. It takes time to gather. It takes time to build skills. Because the Bible calls this time delay seasons. Solomon puts it this way in Ecclesiastes 3:1. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. And then he goes on to list 14 other seasonal events. You remember, those of you that are my age, you remember that song by the Byrds, To Everything Turn, Turn? It's from Ecclesiastes 3:11. That's where it comes from. Dolly Parton went on to record it. Ricky Skaggs went on to record it. The song is based on this text. There's a time to plant, there's a time to harvest, time to scatter, time to gather, time to sow, time to reap. There are different seasons. You will reap in a different season what you planted. So between the then and the now, or the now and the future, there's this time delay. And that can be very irritating because it takes time to get out of the mess you're in because it took a lot of time to put you in that mess. You see, fruit ripens slowly. Now, let me ask you this. Would you rather have a vine-ripe, red, luscious tomato, or would you rather have a tomato that isn't fully ripe and it's still kind of green, but they brush it so that it looks red? I know which one I want, the fully ripened one, because they're going to taste completely different. Okay? There's no comparison between a ripe tomato and an unripe tomato. And in the Bible calls this principle the principle of money management, that I always reap in a different season than what I sow. Remember, not all fruit ripens at the same time. I grew up on a farm. We had apple trees, we had pear trees, we had peach trees. And I could go out there, and as the season progressed, I could find apples that were already red and others that were still green. I could go out there and find peaches that were already ripe and those that were not. I could go out there and find pears that were already ripe and others that were not. They don't ripe all at the same time. Okay? They ripen little by little. And when you start planting and you start sowing, you start following God's principles of money management, you're not going to get a windfall immediately. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Just because you start making a commitment to practice today, it isn't going to happen overnight. You're going to have to allow that time delay to take place. You've got that little great nest egg you want to plant. It's going to take more than a day or a week or a year. It may take years for that thing to ripen to where you need it. It takes a little bit by a little bit. See, what amazes me is that many Christians see God as a slot machine. They pop in a prayer, pull the lever, and God's supposed to give them what they want. They think, well, I'll put $10 in the plate today, and God's going to give me a $100,000 job tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. He's not a genie in a bottle. He doesn't serve us. We serve him. I found this great quote. It's from a song. The quote is this: while I'm waiting, God is working. While I'm waiting, God is working. As you plant that seed, as you take care of that seed, while you're waiting for that seed to come to a ripened state, God is working behind the scenes. You may go out there and look at it, well, nothing's happening. I remember as a little kid, we'd plant our little seeds because we grew every vegetable there was. And as little children, you go plant it, and you think tomorrow there's going to be cucumbers, there's going to be corn, there's going to be this. And I'd ask my mama, where is it? She said, baby, you got to wait. How long? 2 or 3 months. 2 or 3 months? We'll do a 5-year-old. That seems like eternity. Because see, what I love to do, we had a huge farm, and I'd go out there, and I ate more strawberries than we picked. I'd just pull cucumbers off. I didn't care they were dirt on it. I'd just eat them. Now, I know today in a politically correct world, we got to sanitize everything. But I think the reason I'm so healthy today is I eat from the dirt. The little dirt doesn't hurt you, you know? And if you think it does, then why are you planting your seeds in them? Never thought of that, did you? While I'm waiting, God is working. And what seeds you plant, he's working behind the scenes to mature that crop, whatever it is, whatever that seed is. It's time, it's money, it's relationships, whatever it is for you. And one day, a little shoot's going to break through. A few months later, there's going to be a big stalk there. While I'm waiting, God is working. It's not an instant thing. It takes time. There's a season from the planting to the reaping. Law number 6. I will reap more than I sow. I will harvest more than I plant. Unfortunately, this can work towards your good or towards your bad. It can be positive for you. It can be negative towards your life. You will always reap more than you sow. This is called the principle of multiplication. If you take one kernel of corn, and you take that one kernel of corn and you plant it in the ground, I don't get just one kernel of corn stalk back. I get a corn stalk that's got multiple ears of corn on it. In fact, I did a little research. According to the Iowa corn industry, there's between 500 and 1,200 kernels on each ear of corn, with the average being 800 kernels. In addition, the average number of ears of corn per stalk is 2. So from one little kernel, one little seed, you get between 500 and 1,200 kernels per ear of corn. That means, since there's an average of 2 ears of corn on each stalk, you have an average of 1,000 to 2,400 kernels. You always get back more than you sow. It's the exponential power of potential. You're always, whatever seeds you sow, good or bad, you're going to reap more than that in kind back. Jesus talks about this in Mark 4:8. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil. They sprouted, they grew, they produced a crop that was 30, 60, even 100 times as much has been planted. Jesus says not all your fruit will come out at the same time, but what does happen, whatever seeds you sow, good or bad, you're going to reap it 30, 60, and 100-fold. This is going to be true in every area of your life. So if you go out and you gossip about people, you're going to get a 30, 60, 100-fold gossip from other people about you. Because now you've created a chain. You've started something. This is why when people gossip about me, I never attack them. Why? I don't want to get back the same thing. I want good to happen to me. When someone here at this church or anything says something mean or harsh, I don't react the same way. I don't fire back. I don't get in their face and yell and scream at them and say, turn or burn, get right or get left, get sanctified or get French fried. I don't say that. I do the opposite. I respond in love because I want to be loved back. I respond in kindness because I want kindness back. Oh, I know who some of these people are. You don't think the people you talk to about me don't come and tell me? Some of you are here today. And I'm going to love you, and I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to be there for you. Why? Because I want love and support and mercy and forgiveness back. Because whatever you sow, you're going to reap 30, 60, and 100-fold back. You always reap more than you sow. Jesus says in Matthew 5:44, but I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. I love how the Message translation puts it. I'm challenging that, Jesus said. I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with the energies of prayer. For then you're working out your true selves, your God-created selves. This is what God does. He gives his best. The sun to warm and the rain to nourish. To everyone, regardless, the good and the bad, the nice and the nasty. So bless those who attack you. Show compassion to those who are critical of you. Love the people who hurt you. Because that's what you want back in return. Whatever you give out, you will get back 30, 60, and 100-fold. You always reap more than you sow. Law number 7. I can increase my harvest by sowing more seed. This is called the principle of proportion. Now, you increase that harvest by throwing more seed out. If I sow a bunch of seed, I'm going to have a bigger harvest back. You know this. If I sow a little seed, I get a little harvest back. If I sow nothing, I get nothing back. And that's true in every area of your life. Energy, time, intelligence, tithing, talents. Every area of your life. You increase in that area, you will get more of that back. Look at 2 Corinthians 9. Remember this, a farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop. But the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. You must each decide in your heart how much to give. And don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. The King James Version says, God loves a cheerful giver. The Greek word, hilaros, is where we get our English word hilarious. God says that when you give your tithe, you should give so much that you fall over with laughter, going, I can't believe I just gave that much tithe to my church. That's what it means. You see, in the Old Testament, we have give 10%. And the New Testament, we have give sacrificially. You see, for Bill Gates, who's a multi-billionaire, to give 10%, he's not hurt by that. So that's why when we get the New Testament, God says, you give generously till it hurts. You give to where you've got to give up something else because you don't want this about you. You want to make sure that there are times I've written checks and I just started laughing. See, God doesn't need our money. He wants what the money represents to you. For most people, money is an idol. He wants what it does to your heart and to your attitude. We even have a phrase when we want to start a new business. We'll say, I'm setting aside some seed money for this. What is a seed? A seed is anything that I value that I give away. If I give away wisdom, I'll get more wisdom back. If I give away love, I'll get more love back. If I give away my energy, I'll get more energy back. If I give away my money, God's going to give me more money back. If I give away my time, God's going to free up more time for me. You don't have to say, I don't have time. A lot of people say, Pastor Scott, I don't have time to help people. That's not your problem. If you want more time, then give the time, because you always reap what you sow. And not only that, you reap more than what you sowed. A seed is anything that I sow, that I give away. In the Bible calls this another principle. It's called the principle of generosity. And it works for anybody. It doesn't just work for us, it works for lost people too. Lost people, if they followed these principles, God would take care of that too. God says, look, I make the sun shine on the just and the unjust. I give the rain to the just and the unjust. The law of gravity doesn't just work for us who are Christians. It works for everybody. The law of magnetism doesn't just work because we're Christian. It works for everybody. And there are laws of harvest. There are laws of reaping. There's laws of sowing. And they work for anybody regardless of who they are. And you can actually see them. If you go read these self-help books by non-Christians, you'll see these same principles in those. Look at Proverbs 11:24. I love how the Message translation puts this. The world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets what? Smaller and smaller. You sow a little, you're not only going to reap a little, you're going to reap less than a little. Law number 8. The time to sow, the time to plant is now. Nothing happens until the seed is planted. And whatever I sow, I'm going to reap. And I'm always going to reap more than I sow. But I can increase my harvest by planting more seeds, and I need to plant them now. Listen to me. The time to plant is not tomorrow. It is today. I mean, I can't tell you. I've been in ministry about my whole life, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say to me, well, one of these days I'm going to really serve the Lord. One of these days I'm going to go on a mission trip. One of these days I'm going to retire. One of these days I'm going to start giving. Or one of these days when this happens, I'm going to. And one of these days becomes none of these days. The point is, if you wait for things to be perfect, you're never going to do it. Because the sooner you plant, the sooner you will reap. This is called the principle of compounding interest. And it's the single most important principle. In the very first sermon in the series, I quoted Albert Einstein. He said the greatest force in the universe is the principle of compounding interest. You always get back more than what you sow. You start small and you reap big, both good and bad. Solomon writes this in Ecclesiastes 11. Those who wait for perfect weather will never plant seeds. Those who look at every cloud will never harvest crops. Why? Well, I like this quote by psychologist Charlene Johnson. She says, perfection paralyzes potential. I put it this way. I have family members. I say they go through the paralysis of analysis. They overanalyze everything, so they never do anything. They keep waiting for everything to fall into place. Nothing's going to fall into place. So whatever you're going to start doing, you need to start it now. Solomon writes this in Ecclesiastes 11:6. Do your planting in the morning and in the evening too. You never know whether it will all grow well or whether one planting will do better than the other. We're going to come back to this and I think sermon number 5 about investing. So you need to ask yourself, what seeds am I planting today? What seeds of love am I doing? What seeds of grace? What seeds of mercy? What seeds of forgiveness? How can I plant good seeds in other people's lives? You need to get up every day and think, I'm a farmer. I'm broadcasting all kinds of seed. What am I broadcasting? What am I broadcasting when I'm in the grocery store? What am I broadcasting when I'm at the work? What am I broadcasting when I'm talking to my neighbors? What am I broadcasting when I talk to my family? Am I planting good seeds or bad seeds? Because whatever it is, you're going to reap 60, 30, and 100-fold. Look at 2 Corinthians 9. For God is the one who provides the seed for the farmer. Notice, all the good seed comes from God. And then bread to eat. In the same way, he will provide and increase your resources and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. This is a promise. Paul writes this in the context of giving and tithing. He says, the more you give to support the Lord's work, the more God's going to bless you. This is called the principle of the harvest. You always reap more than you sow. You always harvest more than you plant. So you need to start thinking about your seeds. How about your words? When you say words, you plant things in people's minds, and they're there forever and ever, amen. You plant them in your friends and your family's lives. And those seeds are going to grow because they heard what you said. They heard what you did. And you're going to reap back 30, 60, and 100-fold of whatever words you say to anybody. So let me ask you a question. Are you really watching your words? You better be careful of the seeds you plant with your words. Because God will make sure that if it's negative seeds, you're going to reap 30, 60, and 100-fold back. So you need extra stuff. Am I sowing seeds of trust or distrust? Am I sowing seeds of kindness? Am I sowing seeds of mercy? Or am I sowing seeds of anger and animosity and apathy? Am I sowing words that build up? Or am I sowing words that demolish and destroy? See, this is important because I will reap what I sow, and I will reap exponentially what I sow, 30, 60, and 100-fold. And this applies to even your conversations about your faith. Sitting in the office, it comes up, and you just start talking about your faith. Other people are listening in, and those seeds are being scattered. They're being broadcast, and those seeds are going to affect other people. See, that's the joy of planting seeds, the good seeds, that your good fruit, your good seeds are going to bear good fruit. God calls this seed planting. And there are hundreds of verses I could have used today about this. But let me show you this one, 1 Corinthians 9:11. We have sown spiritual seed among you. Is it too much if we reap material benefits from you? Paul is saying, listen, I am pouring good seeds into you, Corinthians. Shouldn't you give me good seed back? Here's the final law. Law number 9. Reaping a harvest requires patience and persistence. God wants you to be patient, but he also doesn't want you to give up. Why? Because there's always a delay from the time you plant to the time you harvest. There's always a delay between the time you sow and the time you reap. Jesus talked about this in Mark 4. He says, the kingdom of God is like a farmer who scatters the seed on the ground night and day while he's asleep or awake, meaning no matter what you're doing, your seeds are doing something. The seed sprouts and grows, but he does not understand how it happens. The earth produces the crops on its own. First the leaf, blade pushes through, then the heads of the wheat are formed, and finally the grain ripens. And as soon as the grain is ready, the farmer comes and harvests it with a sickle, for the harvest time has come. So what is Jesus saying there? The results will come, and they will come slowly, and they will come systematically, but they will come. Your good seeds as well as your bad seeds. If you're planting good seeds, be patient, be persistent, because you're going to reap a good harvest in the future. Paul writes in Galatians 6 this, let's not get tired of doing what is good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially to those in the family of faith. I want you to underline those two phrases there. We will, and we don't give up. He didn't say we might. He didn't say we hope. He said we will, if we don't give up. And as your pastor, I love you. And if in your past you've got crop failure, forget about it. You can't do anything about that. Maybe you've wasted years. You've wasted words. You've said things you wish you'd never said. You've done things you wish you'd never done. You're going to have to live with the consequences of that, but you can make a change today in your life to start casting good seed. You got to focus long term, not short term. You didn't get in debt overnight, and you're not going to get out of debt overnight. It took years to get you in the mess you're in, and it's going to take a little longer to get you out. There's a time between you plant and the time you reap. There's a time between you sow and the time you harvest. Your finances, if they're in a mess, if you'll do what I'm teaching you in this series, you will get out of debt. You may look at your finances this morning and it brings tears to your eyes. Start now. You may look at your finances and go, I don't know if we can make it. Start now. You may say, well, I'm in a worse condition than I was 5 years ago. Start now. It will take a while. It may be bringing you grief now. The things you've said, the things you've done, the things you didn't say, the things you didn't do, maybe they're bringing you grief now. Let me give you a great verse to focus on. Psalm 126. Those who plant in tears will harvest with shouts of joy. They weep as they go to plant their seed, but they sing as they return with the harvest. So I've got a couple of questions for you. They're going to come up on the screen. What loss has you grieving? What crop failure has you grieving? Poor money management? Words you cannot take back? Failures you cannot undo? What lack has you grieving? What need have you been grieving over? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you lost a loved one. Maybe you've lost your savings. Maybe you lost your retirement. Maybe you lost a dream you always had. Mourning is okay. Moaning is not. There's a big difference in mourning and moaning. Jesus said in Matthew 5:4, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So this morning in our invitation time, pour out your mourning to God. Tell him how sorry you are. You've wasted those years. You've wasted those words. You wish you'd done things differently. But commit today. God, beginning today, I will start broadcasting good seeds. And if you will, he will keep his word. He will honor you 30, 60, and 100-fold from the good seeds you begin to plant beginning today. Southside, that's how you get out of the money pit. Let's pray.